Hey, Torlando here with Craftsman Painter. Today I want to talk a little bit about hiring. And this part will not go into recruiting so much as we're going to focus on specifically that hiring process once you have a candidate. Of course, if you are trying to recruit, I recommend our friends at Viva HR. It's a great tool that pumps out a ton of job postings to all the different job posting services like Indeed, ZipRecruiter, all those, and you're going to get a lot of candidates, and I especially like it for finding sales personnel. But we're not going to focus on the recruiting aspect. This is if you have a viable candidate, you have read the resume, they've applied, and you think, okay, I'm going to use this person, right? Or at least I'm going to put this person in the process of looking at hiring them, okay? And so there are certain things that people do in hiring that ultimately don't produce good candidates, high performers. Okay, and so we're gonna have to dispel a couple of the myths out there, and we're gonna have to reorient the process so that we are focused on evidence based methodologies for hiring, so that you can be a little more confident that the hires that you're producing are going to work out. So let's go ahead and jump right into this. The first thing that we're going to talk about is a knowledge assessment. A knowledge assessment is where you're actually testing out the knowledge that the candidate is coming with. So, with knowledge assessments, basically what we're doing is we're asking them questions specifically about the job that they would know if they actually knew what they were doing. And so in painting, we're going to be asking questions that are related to paint processes. And, you might ask them in this form. It's just a little assessment. We might ask them to put in order the steps of painting a room. And you'll list out the different steps out of order and see if they can number them in order. You might ask them questions about, how open-ended questions. How do you patch a wall? Very very basic things for people who have been doing it for a long time. But for somebody who is a novice or an apprentice, it's going to be a quick tell as to whether they know what they're doing or not. And depending on the time of year that you're in, you're either going to need somebody who already knows what they're doing, or you have the capacity to train. And so if you have the capacity to train, you're not going to need to have, they're not going to need to pass this assessment with flying colors, especially if you have them mark what their stages are. They apprentice? Are they journeyman? Are they craftsman? But if you're in a stage where, okay, we really need to hire people who know what they're doing, then this knowledge assessment is a good indicator of exactly that. And it's cheap. It's easy to implement. We put it as a part of our application form. In fact, members of our collective get this resource for free. It's a simple PDF. You can print it off. It's super cheap. It doesn't cost anything to implement this knowledge test. Here's why it's important. Here's why these things work. One, let's talk about predictive validity. What this means is that the studies show that knowledge assessments can predict job performance. If they do well on the job, on the knowledge assessment, the likelihood of them doing well on the job goes up. You actually get reduced turnover because you are hiring people who have a stronger knowledge set, and you're less likely to get people who are going to quit because they jump in and they're like, well, this is more than I thought it'd be. So you get reduced turnover. Improved hiring decisions, right? So if you screen that candidate and you give them this assessment and they do well, it's a clear benchmarker. Did this person do well on the assessment? Did they not? You want to hire the person who does the best on the assessment. But here's where I want you to be careful, okay? Where a lot of hiring managers get kind of tripped up is they don't give the test to every person. In fact, this is where a lot of bias can come in. A lot of problematic bias can come in this. There are studies that show that a lot of hiring managers out there, they might give a knowledge assessment to a minority candidate and judge it very very critically, whereas they might have a preferred non-minority candidate that they don't give the test to at all. And so if you're going to implement a knowledge assessment, you want to make sure that you do it every single time. And the way that we do this, like I said, that application sheet, if they're going to apply, they have to use the application sheet, and that's going to collect their information that you need to be able to hire them. But then they're going to have to fill out that assessment right there on the application form. Okay, so it's not your standard typical application form. The assessment is built right in. They're very cost effective. It's a matter of printing it out on a sheet of paper. You could use a Google form for this knowledge assessment. That's free. And the studies also show that the candidate experience is even better because it feels more professional. They feel like they have to qualify for this job. And so if they do well, then they feel like they've earned it, which improves the experience. Let's take a look at a couple studies here. An SHRM study found that 79% of HR professionals believe that scores on skills test assessments are as or more important than traditional criteria in hiring decisions. Research at High Match indicates that job knowledge assessments can significantly improve the quality of hire and reduce time to fill. Numerous case studies from companies across industries have demonstrated the positive impact of knowledge assessments on hiring outcomes, employee performance, and overall business success. Second comes the behavioral interviews, or sometimes I call them structured interviews. Let's jump into why these are so important. Again, predictive validity. If you are designing an interview where your questions are designed specifically to draw out the behaviors you want to see an employee, you're going to have better results in hiring. And the way that I design these questions I'm trying to pull out from their past experience, but I'm also looking for what they would do in certain what if scenarios, right? So let me give you an example. Let's say that I know, because I'm in painting, that emotional, you get emotional customers, right? And sometimes the customer, the stakes feel really high, and a little boo boo happens, and all of a sudden they're like, they blow the lid off, right? People are emotional. It's part of the job. And so in this case, I might ask, okay, tell me about a time that you had to deal with somebody who wasn't happy with you. What was the situation, and how did you move through it, right? And so that question asks them to recall a memory, and because they're recalling a memory, we have to assume that they're going to be honest about this. But when people are on the spot like that, they are likely to retrieve the information that's coming most readily, and unless they're a pathological liar or a narcissist, then they're going to tell a story of something that actually happened. And so we can kind of see and listen for clues as to how they would deal with it. Now, if they're like, well, some people are just never happy and there ain't much you can do about it. Well, now we know that this is a person who, maybe they don't get too heated in the moment, but they're definitely not going to try to solve problems for you, right? What we would rather hear is something like, well, I had an experience where, I was working at a bakery and I misspelled a kid's name, and the parent was picking up the cake, and it was 2 minutes until they had to go to the party right away, and they were really upset because I had misspelled the name. And so what I did is I took the cake back, I very delicately removed what I had done, and I redid the name, I spelled it correctly, I showed it to the customer. She approved it. I stayed calm during the situation. And, the big thing is, listening to the customer's concerns, coming up with a solution, and then delivering. That's a kind of answer that I would want to hear, right? Because I know that if we're translating their performance in decorating a cake to, okay, we've painted the room the wrong color, then they're going to approach it with a little bit more of a calm demeanor, focused on solution, focused on active listening, and that's the kind of thing that I want to hear. You might also give questions that are pulling out what are they going to do, like what would they do in a situation, right? Tell me if you like, what would you walk me through a scenario where you would have to organize a bake sale? What would you do, right? And obviously, I'm using this example of a bake sale. It's not related to painting. It could be related to painting, and that's probably better. But I'm going to go with the bake sale. Well, what I want to hear is what planning goes into the process of planning a bake sale. Are they thinking about all the details? Are they thinking about communication? Are they thinking about timeline? Are they thinking about shopping lists, ingredients, recipes, right? I want to know if they're approached with a problem that they have never faced before, what does their mental process look like for coming up with a solution, right? If they respond too simply like, I don't even know. I've never done a bake sale. Then I know that this is a person who can't think critically in the moment, right? And so we want to design our questions around past experiences and what if scenarios. Top 5 reasons to use these structured interviews: predictive validity, once again, reliability. They're shown to be far more reliable than just going in and not having any planned questions whatsoever. They reduce bias. Okay, so another, bias is really important to watch out for in making hiring decisions. You could go into one interview, and because you like the person, because you relate to them, because of our unconscious biases, we're not intentionally doing this, but we might ask one candidate some pretty softball questions. I've done this. I've gone into interviews where I didn't even have questions prepared, and I just end up blabbing and going on and on about how great our company is, and then I say, you seem great. You want to, when can you start? Those candidates don't always end up the best, as you could imagine. And maybe if I'm in the same hiring cycle and I ask questions that, that that are harder, or I might inadvertently make the hiring process for one person very difficult, while for another person making it kind of easy. And so by having structured interviews where you ask the same questions to every candidate, it reduces bias and it helps you come up with a more reliable assessment of this person. Once again, it enhances the candidate experience because it feels like they're walking into a professional company. And then you have, of course, legal defensibility. If you have somebody who, for whatever reasons, thinks that you're maybe discriminating against them, and that you're not providing an equal opportunity for all candidates, you can go, you can present, hey, these are the questions that we ask everybody. Here's the scorecard. This is as unbiased and non-discriminatory of a process as we could possibly make it. Now, am I prone to personal bias? Yes, but studies show that structured interviews help to reduce bias. Let's look at a couple of the research, some of this research here. A study by Huffcutt and Arthur in 1994 found that structured interviews are twice as likely to predict job performance as unstructured interviews. Research by Schmidt and Hunter 1998 supports the use of structured interviews as part of a multifaceted selection process for maximizing predictive validity. Campion in 1997 highlighted the importance of behavioral interviewing, a type of structured interview for assessing past behavior and predicting future job performance. The third step is going to be the skills assessment. And the skills assessment, this is the most important one. If you're designing a hiring process and you're like, we can't do multi-phase. We can't do, they got to do a skills test and then they got to sit down, and I just don't have any time for that. This is the one that you choose. It is the skills assessment. And what that basically means is you are getting the person on the job site and getting a work sample. You need to see their work, right? And the irony of this is most people don't do this. Most hiring managers don't do this. It is a lot of work. There is some risk involved, but you've got to get them on a job site or in a controlled room and test their skills. Okay. And the reality, you can bring them on. You can bring them on as a day laborer and onto a job site. You're gonna tell really quick within an hour whether they should continue doing their skills tests or not. You're gonna know instantly. And so bring them out, have them do a small series of tests. In our system, we obviously do the point system. I like to see 3 points. I like to see, I'd like to see them produce 3 points of varying tasks: prep work, brush work, rolling, painting a door, something like that. So I can tell what are they going to do. And so what we'll do on that day of the skills test is we'll set out the tools and equipment that they would need onto a drop cloth. And then we might say, okay, paint this wall, right? Paint this wall beginning to finish. And we're not going to give a ton of instruction. We're going to see what tools they pick up, how they approach it. Do they jump right in? Do they do the right things? If they start to do the wrong things, we course correct pretty quickly, right? Because, we don't want paint to spill on the customer's floor or anything like that. So it has to be very controlled. You want to control the environment as much as possible. But we want them to do it and see how experienced they actually are. The reason that this is so valuable is that it tells you where they're at, right? And if you have the capacity to train, then you're looking for good attitude. You're looking for are they fun to work with? Can we carry on a decent conversation while this is going on, or can they not paint and talk? Some people, they can't paint and talk. And if they can't paint and talk, what's going to happen is they're going to have a lot of wasted time during the workday, because people like to talk while they're at work, unless they just have their headphones in. But some people, they can't paint and talk. And so, let's look at the behavior. Let's look at their process. Let's look at their speed. Let's look at their skill. Is it something that we can work with? Are they at the skill level that we need? And the reason that we do 3 points is because we want to see how fast they do it. And if it takes them 3 hours to do 3 points, then we know that they are at the beginning stages of their career, and that we're going to have a little bit more hands-on approach in training. If they do the 3 points in an hour, we know that we have a rock star on our hands. And so the skills test is the most important part of this process. I do reserve it to the end because it is time intensive and it carries some risk. And so I want to kind of vet them through the other parts of the process, the knowledge assessment, the structured interview. I want to know that I like who these people are. I think that they're going to make good decisions. But ultimately it's their employment is going to hinge on the skills test and whether or not we have the capacity to train, or whether we need somebody who can jump in and do this right away. Again, top 5 reasons: predictive validity. All 3 of these: predictive validity. That's what we want. Does the assessment, does the process in hiring predict positive outcomes for these workers? Reduce turnover. This one's interesting. You're inviting them into the job site so that they can see who they're going to work with, and you're actually going to have them engage a little bit with the crew. If everybody's feeling comfortable and they like this person, and they're going to fit the team culture, and everybody's going to have fun, I'll tell you what, when painters are having fun on the job, they produce better jobs. They really do. Improved hiring decisions. I think that this one is obvious because you're getting the work sample. Enhanced candidate experience. They get to assess what our job sites are like. If they walk in and our job site's a mess and the crew leader is a jerk, and they don't even like the type of house that we bring them to isn't the kind of house that they want to be in, then they have the ability to self-select out if they want to. But if they look at it and they see the vibe and they like everything that's going on, they're going to say, you know what, I want to be a part of this culture. And the 5th thing is that it allows you to identify potential, right? Like I said, some people are on different stages of the path. And if you have the capacity to train and you're like, you know what, I think this person is a quick learner, they're listening, they're coachable, they're following instructions, as they need them, I can work with this person. We've got good potential here, right? The skills test is the most important one. Let's look at the research here. Um, SHRM, Society of Human Resource Management, study found, once again, 79% of HR professionals believe that scores on skills assessment are as important or more important than traditional criteria in hiring decisions. Research by the Aberdeen Group indicates that companies using pre-hire assessments are 36% more likely to be satisfied with their new hires. A study by Leadership IQ found that 89% of new hires will fail within 18 months. They do so because of attitude, not skills. Skills assessments can help identify candidates with the right attitude and aptitude. And a study published in the Journal of Applied Psychology found that work sample tests, a type of skills assessment, have higher predictive validity for job personality than cognitive ability tests or personality tests. Let's talk a little bit about these personality tests. Should you use them in hiring? This is a good question. A lot of people like certain tests. The problem is that most of the personality tests do not really work in terms of predictive validity. They don't produce. They don't help you know if the job is going to, or if the person is going to do the job well. But there are some pros and cons. First off, I recommend, if you're going to use one, I recommend the Big Five. It's the only one that has truly passed academic rigor and to show actual predictive validity. Pros and cons of some of these tests. The pros, they can give you insight into the candidate's traits. When you're comparing apples to apples, you're comparing a lot of different personality assessments to each other. It does give you a fairly objective comparison, allows you to identify the strengths and weaknesses of the candidate. Some of them can predict job performance. The Big Five in particular can predict job performance, and team building is a benefit. Only because if you kind of have an understanding of the person's personality, sometimes it can help you communicate a little bit better. There are some serious cons, though. One, the potential for faking. If you do the personality test and you kind of know how they work and you kind of know how to answer the questions right, you can fake these tests pretty easily. There is a limited scope. They only identify a small portion of the candidate's personality traits, and a lot of them aren't great predictors of outcomes, In fact, these tests are not a sole predictor of outcomes. So you can't just take the test and say, yeah, this type of personality profile is going to produce a winner. That's just not how it works. And then there are ethical concerns. Is this prying too much into the person's personal life and personality? There are bias concerns about bias. In particular, if we start to say this is the specific type of profile that we want for this specific role, which is what a lot of the personality tests claim to be best at. The problem with doing that is you end up with a homogenous group of team members, and homogenous groups are prone to groupthink, and that can be an inhibitor for the progress of your business. In other words, when people are too similar and they get into this groupthink pattern, what happens is all of a sudden they start leading themselves off of a cliff, and everybody thinks it's a great idea. You need diversity of thought. You need diverse people in your business in order to have those people who have the different perspectives and the courage to raise their hand and say, hey, I think that we're, from my perspective, I think that we're headed off of a cliff, and here's why. And having a diverse team will allow that person to be heard, and it'll save you a lot of money in the long run. Speaking of money, personality tests can be expensive if you use them in a hiring process. And so if you're going to use one, I recommend proceeding with caution. But in a lot of instances, they're just not going to help you as much as we want them to. Okay, here's the hiring play recap. It's a 3-step hiring process. Once you get that candidate and you've screened their resume, you're going to administer a knowledge test. Do that to every single person. You're going to sit the people who pass your test. You're going to advance them to a behavioral interview where you're going to ask structured questions that aim to figure out what they would do in future situations and what they have done in the past. And then last, you're going to invite them out to a wall that they can paint. And you're going to administer a skills test to see where they're at. They pass through each of these stages. You're going to have a person who is exactly what you need them to be. They're going to be at the skill level that you want. They're going to have the behaviors that you want. They're going to have the knowledge that you want. Or, on the other hand, if you have the capacity, they're at least going to come with the character and the motivation to learn so that you can mold them into the type of hire that is really going to perform for your company.